What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Uh, First off, I want to say thank you if you're watching this video. Appreciate the support. I got a lot of good people on my main channel, and some of them managed to find their way over here, so I appreciate the effort because, well, many didn't. And kind of gonna pick up where I left off, even though this is something that we've talked about, well, since what, February or March, and that's like the soft core mandate for the COVID-19 vaccine. And a lot of the things that in the beginning I'm gonna go through isn't really anything new, but it is very, very important, especially when you take the information and you put it in context and you look at the big picture. You look at the entirety of it all. I'm going to start off with this article from the NPR, but there's some pretty good information that I'm going to run through, so please stick with me to the end. As COVID-19 vaccine nears, employers consider making it mandatory. I know. I mean, that's nothing new, right? They're going to do everything that they can to make everybody receive this vaccine. And you have to ask yourself, and you can't listen for 1 second to the garbage that's coming out of these puppets from this propaganda machine. Just a few months into the coronavirus pandemic, Holly Smith had already made up her mind. She was not going to reopen her restaurant to diners until there was a vaccine. Right then and there, and keep in mind this is from NPR, they're basically saying in a roundabout way, I mean, you gotta, the way I do this and the way I'm as accurate as I am sometimes on some of these things is because you gotta take this information and project it out. And this is a good example of it. So she don't want to open up her restaurant, I'm sure, until there's a vaccine, right? As families are trying to survive, as people are trying to make ends meet, and they're being forced to shut down, this person doesn't even want to open up. They're saying, no, we're staying closed until there's a vaccine. Well, it must be nice to have that kind of money because most Americans, they can't afford to close their restaurant slash small business, regardless of what the reason was. She was not going to reopen her restaurant to diners until there was a vaccine. She just didn't think it was safe. When she shared the decision with her staff, they asked, would the vaccine be mandatory? Yes, she said. It would be. Now, to me, this sounds like a completely made up story, but who knows? I'm not going to open until I can indeed be sure that everyone on my staff is vaccinated. It's just predictive programming. All of the major corporations, and the list is huge. I actually have that list. It's not associated necessarily with this, but it's a list of all these corporations that are basically bought and paid for, right? They're New World Order sellouts, and they're going to do what it is that the global agenda wants them to do, what the elites want them to do. And there's a lot of them. That's why they're shutting down, whether it be riots or whether it be being shut down because local ordinances told you to shut down because you had one too many people in close proximity or you exceeded the total capacity of the building during this crucial time. They're wiping out the small and middle class essentially. And that'll leave the governments and big businesses, and they always talk about public-private cooperation. And it's fascism, and what it is, it's the biggest companies of the world and the most powerful governments basically coming together under one roof to control and run everything. Seth Smith, chef and owner of Cafe Juanita in Kirkland. The immediate people on the team, you got to take care of them. If you don't take care of them, they cannot help you take care of business. With promising news from 3 COVID-19 vaccine trials showing 90 to 95% efficacy, employers are now weighing whether they should simply encourage their employees to get vaccinated or make it mandatory. And it was always going to be like this. Since the very beginning, all of these big companies are going to be on board, and then there's going to be a lot of pressure on these smaller businesses. I'm sure they're not, just like they did with the first round of the COVID-19 relief, the stimulus packages, right, where they gave small businesses money to stay afloat, just like they did with individual people. There's going to be conditions on the next one. And they're not going to hand that money to small businesses that aren't complying with this vaccine mandate. Well, it won't be a mandate right off the jump, right? But basically, if you're not distributing this among your employees, if you're not making this mandatory for your employees, we cannot provide you with the funds to, and I'm sure it'll be semi-lucrative, right? Free money. Especially when a lot of these businesses are having a hard time staying afloat as it is. Now, the big ones are already bought and paid for, so that's not going to be an issue. All the big companies out there, if you work for one of them, well, you're going to have to get your vaccine in order to continue to work. The U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration has stated that employers can legally impose a flu vaccine requirement on their workforce, but employees have the right to request medical or religious exemptions under federal anti-discrimination laws. Each claim must be evaluated on its own merits, a time-consuming process for employers. Well, in a state of a national emergency, I'm sure they'll find a way around it. While it may be legal for employers to compel their workers to get the COVID-19 vaccine, doing so would be a huge, difficult undertaking, says Y. Tony Yang, Executive Director for the Center of Health and Policy and Media Engagement at George Washington University, who has argued against COVID-19 vaccine mandates. It's going to have a lot of pushback, and lots of people are going to claim exemptions out of concern about the safety of the vaccine, he says. A recent Gallup poll found that 42% of Americans say they will not get the COVID-19 vaccine, though the poll was conducted before the recent optimistic vaccine results. Well, those people, I'm pretty sure it's not going to sway them, because as more and more people wake up, as more and people start looking into this that are concerned, right? And they have every right to, they should be. People should be pissed off at this point. They should be furious at what's being done, not just to them, but as a collective to humanity. And it is just absolutely sickening and disturbing to watch this play out and to watch a lot of people just go along with it. But it's not entirely their fault, right? They were raised in front of a television. They've been indoctrinated with all of the propaganda and spoon-fed every day, hours upon hours of this trash. But they can break free. Many of us have. And hopefully that will continue. I see this number rising. That means more and more people are at least questioning the efficacy, if not the actual intention behind vaccinating the world as fast as possible. Especially if you've been following the work I've been doing involving what essentially is in this vaccine. Now, I find it kind of interesting that a band by the name of Tool, right before this this pandemic had started, released an album on October 30th called Fear Inoculum. Now, if you know anything about this band Tool, they're always pretty cryptic, and they encode a lot of messages, and they use a lot of symbolism and a lot of things like that. Fear Inoculum. Now, inoculum is what is in an inoculation, what is in a vaccine. They haven't released an album, what was it, 8 years, 10 years? It was a long time before they released an album, and they come out with that one. I just thought that was kind of interesting. One among the many other things that I've seen. The pork producer Smithfield Foods, which sustained a coronavirus outbreak early in the pandemic that affected nearly 1,300 workers, according to OSHA, says it does not anticipate a firm mandate at this time, even as the company has requested priority access to the vaccine for food and agricultural workers. Smithfield is aiming to offer the vaccine on site once it becomes available. Yep. And then what do you think? This is another technique they're going to use. So they're offering it on site, and a lot of big companies are going to do the same. And if you don't take it, oh well, later on, I'm sure there'll be some little outbreak in that factory. Maybe a person or two supposedly come down with the virus. Well, they just can't have people there without the vaccine. We're sorry, it's either take it or you can't work here anymore. This is going to be across the board. And this will get a lot of people vaccinated. It's going to be very, very hard to turn away from a place. Maybe you've been there a year, maybe you've been there 15. But you have to put food on the table. You have to clothe your children. How are you going to manage? What are you going to do when they say? It's why there has to be enough of us that refuse it. And yeah, sure, that's what they want to know basically who the people are that aren't going to go along with this, and they're going to be pushed into a corner. And they're not going to receive any of the benefits as they're creating these food shortages, which is going to be a huge issue next year. I mean, we're already starting to see it as it progresses, but 2021, year of the food shortage, mark my words. Not to mention potential cyber attack, but regardless, it's going to be very hard for a lot of people, and it's going to be a hard choice to make. And your children, they won't be able to go to school. Every state and government, organization, institution, or anything like that will be mandating. So, find the strength within you to do what it is that you think you should do. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I got some more things that I want to briefly. I always say that, but it never turns out to be that way, huh? I'm going to start with this. Well, not start, but Governor Cuomo will mobilize an army to get the vaccine to New Yorkers. This was back in November 16th. But I missed it, and I'm glad I came across it because it's pretty telling. New York Governor Cuomo said he may take legal action against the federal government over the potential distribution of a pending coronavirus vaccine, and that he would mobilize an army to get New Yorkers vaccinated. President Donald Trump on Friday suggested that an FDA-approved vaccine would be delayed to New York and other states that have pledged to carry out their own safety reviews of the vaccine. The president singled out New York and its governor. The vaccine will be available to the entire general population with the exemption of places like New York, where, for political reasons, the governor decided to say, and I don't think it's good politically, I think it's very bad from a health standpoint, but he wants to take his time with the vaccine. Oh yeah? I think Cuomo really gives a damn about the people, because I mean, it's just a dog and pony show, right? Because New York is very next. Well, hold on, let me not get ahead of myself. Good old New York. And this is the state in which I live in, and like we just seen, Cuomo, such a good guy. He wants to look into this vaccine and make sure it's safe for everybody. But if this article ever loaded, we would see otherwise. But I got other ones to go through nonetheless. We'll come back to that. But it's the state bar. On my main channel, I showed that the state bar had passed a mandatory recommendation in New York. And what does that mean? It means if they don't receive the necessary amount of people to receive herd immunity, then it'll become mandatory. And there's some pretty interesting information regarding that alone, because 1 out of 4 people in New York, 1 out of 3 people in New York. Oh, this is garbage. This ain't even real. I think it's like 1 out of 4 in New York won't receive the vaccine. So that's not going to be herd immunity. That's not going to be, yeah, it's 1 in 4 right here. That's not going to be enough, according to the state, for them to receive herd immunity. Now, of course, when I do these kind of things, when I make these videos, stuff like this happens. So I'm not surprised. But nonetheless, the connection's there, right? So there was the state bar passed saying, well, it's a mandatory recommendation. And only if there's not enough people that get vaccinated, then we will mandate a vaccine. I find that rather interesting because we already know by the predictive programming, by the propaganda, that's exactly what is going to happen. So, app eject. Not really off topic. It is one of the vaccine companies. It never does. It's one of the vaccine companies, anyway, that have very interesting information dealing with this vaccine. And what that is there's an RFID chip on every single syringe. So each and every syringe can be tracked. And keep in mind, every single syringe will be associated with that individual. Now, what that leads me to believe is that there may be different vaccines released to the public, and in those vaccines, there may be different concoctions. That's why they need to keep track of the serial numbers. And it's very telling, but like I said, this is what they like to do to me during recording videos. But I'm going to wrap it up here anyway, guys. I appreciate you joining me. If you could share this video, or at least the message that I'm going to be using my backup. I'm going to try to get the word out and be bringing out some pretty interesting information in the near future. I think you guys will find rather fascinating. So thank you to my subs for all the support and jumping over to this channel. Means a lot. I appreciate it. Hope you guys have a really good day, good week, good month, good year. Much love, peace.